Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code STARDUST to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
This is Heather Antost, Gonk enthusiast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. If they talk about anything else than Dr. Aphra, they're doing it wrong.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
We're going to be diving back into some Star Wars comics with a look at issues 5 and 6 of the High Republic. That's Phase 3. These were written by Cavan Scott. But before we do that, Jay, remind everybody where we can be found around the internet.
Sure thing, Dennis. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust.
All right, just the line. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. We're going to get into a full spoiler discussion of these 2 issues of the High Republic from Phase 3. But we'll lead off with a few non-spoiler thoughts at first. I'll start by telling you that the series is written by Cavan Scott. We've got art by Ariel Anindito and Marika Cresta on these issues. The inkers are Mark Morales and also Marika Cresta. Colorist is Jim Campbell, and the letterer is VC's Ariana Mayer, and covers by Phil Noto, the legendary Phil Noto.
Yes.
I think these might be the last issues that Ariel Anindito worked on too.
Oh,
Because
wow.
he was leaving the series, unfortunately, being signed to other stuff.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we've got the credits out of the way. What did you think about these 2 issues overall?
Well, it was one of those things where I had to go back and really get my mindset into where we left off, because it's been a while. I mean, we've definitely put a pin in this for quite some time, and then finally getting back into it. But it was great to see these characters again. It was great to get, Keeve Trennis and Lourna Dee and Sskeer and the whole 9 yards. And there was some surprises that came about in these 2 episodes, but definitely a lot of great action. And a lot of things that are leading up to a road that might get a little bumpy for our characters for sure, but very enjoyable.
Yeah, I liked him too. I kind of found issue 5 to be confusing on the first read. I had to go back and reread it in order to put some things together, and we'll get into the reasons why when we dive into our spoiler thoughts on that. But yeah, it was really fun getting to see Keeve Trennis again. This is, she's largely relegated to the comics. She doesn't show up much in the novels, which is fine. She's the star of the comics. Sskeer gets more attention in the comics as well, and so we get some appearances by him, which is fantastic. And then we get assortment of other Jedi and some other things that are going on. But it ties in well with the other things that are going on in Phase 3, and I would definitely recommend it. I think in comparison, I prefer the other work that Cavan Scott's done in the first 2 phases for Marvel to this so far, but there's still plenty of issues left to go. So that may change. It just may be where we are in the story beats and at this point in the storytelling.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. I think for the most part, the original series was just so new. You know what I mean? That we were getting these new characters and these new threats to the Jedi and the galaxy. And, as a whole, we were getting the Drangir for the first time and the Nameless for the first time, and then getting introduced to a lot of these characters for the first time. So, as much as it's not that it's a bad thing that we know a lot of these things kind of going into it, but it does take away some of that newness, that freshness for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. We are very much further along in these characters' journeys.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like old friends in that way.
Yes.
And it's not to say that it isn't fun and it isn't exciting in parts, because it definitely is, but there aren't as many moments of discovery, I guess, is the
Mm-hmm.
way
Mm-hmm.
I'd put it there. And so I like what you said. I think you're right. Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and move into some of our more spoilery thoughts on this. When we last left this comic after issue 4, they're on the planet of Kindersorn, and they've kind of had their ship uh, sabotaged. We've reunited with some Jedi, some of which we thought were to be dead, including the amorphous Orbelin,
Mm-hmm.
who at the end of phase 1 had been shot in the head by Lourna Dee, but he seems to have survived that. The head, in quotes, because he's a blob, and so they don't really have a head. And then we've got Gunral and Manshi as well, and then the traveling team of Keeve Trennis, Terec and Ceret, and they've brought Lourna Dee as well. They're on the other side of the storm wall in the inclusion zone, and Keeve is a main objective is to find what happened to Master Sskeer. And she finds him, but he is suffering from the Magrak syndrome that Trandoshans get. So he's kind of lost his mind a bit.
Yeah.
And so she sets out to reunite with him, and she successfully does. He's kind of a savage character, and she talks him down. What did you think about the reuniting with Sskeer and how that worked?
Well, getting back into this, of course, in the occlusion zone puts us in the same mindset of the novels that we are currently digesting and getting into. So that was cool to get back into that. And then I really felt for Keeve because with Sskeer suffering from this Magrak syndrome, it's almost like a rabid dog in a way
Mm-hmm.
that you know that the person that you love is still in there, and the person that she knew as her master was still in there, but was just being overcome by this syndrome, which, in a lot of ways I could understand that her dedication to him was one of the things that broke him out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was truly something that was physical and biological, I'm not quite sure that I buy into the fact that she was just able to break him of this. You know what I mean? That I don't know how, and maybe I need
Sure.
some help with that. I was just a little bit like, okay, I
It,
get it. It's all touchy-feely, but is that really that realistic?
I
I mean,
think
we're
for
talking
me,
Star Wars, but
right, right. I think I was like equating this to some form of dementia, where
okay.
people who are suffering with that, they have their good days and their bad days until they get into like the final stages of it, where
Okay.
they have these moments of
Yeah.
clarity where they recognize their family and they, can carry on a conversation, but then they slip back
Okay.
into it. And the next day they don't recognize anybody. And
Okay.
so you kind of take them as they come in
Mhm.
this case. So in that sense, it worked for me.
Mhm.
But
I can see
uh,
that.
yeah, and then you put the Star Wars spin on it, and this is something unique to Trandoshans, and fine, Magrak disease can be recovered from. And I kind of hope that's where they're going with this. That this has been previously sold with to us as like an incurable thing, and at
Right.
the end of phase 1, Sskeer was charging off to fight the Nameless that were on Starlight Beacon because his connection to the Force had been diminished because of this syndrome, and therefore he was not being affected by them.
Mhm.
And we thought he perished
Right.
when the space station blew up, but you know, Keeve had other ideas and believed that he would have survived. And lo and behold, she found him in the occlusion zone, and it worked. So, but I found it touching. I liked it. I liked the little flashback panels that they
Oh,
had
yeah.
for when Keeve was a very young Padawan, and then later when she was either an older Padawan or a knight. I can't remember. I didn't think to check if she still had the braid or not in there. Is she's trying to reach out to him, and she does. She breaks through, and so
Mhm.
it was kind of a less is more. She didn't make some long, drawn out, impassioned plea. She just begged him to remember, and
Mhm.
he did, and
Yep.
she got through to him.
Just making that connection.
Mm,
Although I will say I have to laugh a little bit because Lourna Dee was she was like, "I just think we need to get away from it," and she was trying to fight
mm.
him and everything, which obviously Keeve was trying to keep her away because she knew that the real Sskeer was in there. But it was just I almost had to laugh because that's so Lourna Dee, you know?
Yeah, I've read ahead on this series a little bit, and so I kind of know where things are going with Lourna Dee, and I like it. But yeah, because she's pleading with Keeve at the beginning. That's like, we should run. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we should definitely run. And she's like, no, you don't understand. We really got to run.
Yes, that's why I was laughing. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, sneaks up and smacks him in the back of the head with one of the stones from the temple that's
Mm-hmm.
there, and then Sskeer grabs her by the laku and throws her across the room, and she's like, just kind of like doesn't believe that there's any chance to recover Sskeer, despite Keeve's best, and it works. So,
Mm-hmm.
any your thoughts on them before we turn to the other storyline that's going on here?
No, not really.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so the other thing we have going on is while Keeve and Lourna were looking for Sskeer in the temple, we have Terec, Ceret, Orbelin, and Gunral Monshai there at the camp. And Gunral and Orbelin had been stranded on this planet with Sskeer. Sskeer had actually attacked Gunral. We're not exactly sure why, but he had. And then, so he's not in good shape. Terec and Ceret, of course, they're the bonded like twins. They almost share a conscience. They finish each other's sentences and things like that. But ever since phase 1, they have not been getting along. And I've been chalking part of that up to their exposure to the Nameless, because they were like partially calcified and had to recover from that. Terec runs off after a creature that he'd kind of like adopted as a pet here on this planet, and then Ceret shooed it away. But Terec wanders off, and then all of a sudden he encounters Drengir.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's not what he's seeing things, that this is a vision that's planted in his head. But before that reveal, what did you think when we saw the Drengir?
I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Where did they come from? Because it was just all of a sudden, there they were.
Yeah. I'm also reading Temptation of the Force. Minor spoiler, the Drengir get touched on there too. And so I was like, wow, they're really doing this. And the thing that's causing the confusion across the High Republic properties is that the progenitor of the Drengir was in stasis on Starlight Beacon before it was destroyed.
Right.
So what does that mean
Where are
for the
they coming
Drengir?
from? Yeah.
Yeah. Are they done for? Are they freed? Or what's going on? So we got that little bit of a mystery across phase 3 to resolve here. But it ends up this just being a vision that the Jedi Hunter, which is one of the child of the Storm, is messing with Terec. And similarly, that Ceret is seeing visions of Nameless and other creatures, which are actually being enhanced by the fact that there's a Nameless around.
Yes.
What do you think about this whole conflict, this thing that was going on between Terec and Ceret?
Well, again, their bond was kind of all messed up when all the Nameless stuff happened, and it was kind of comical in a way, but yet it was almost like too slapstick, with that little critter that Terec has on his shoulder, and then Ceret's like smacking it away and basically telling him it's worthless, and why are you doing this? So it was a little disjointed from what their relationship was before, which I can understand though because of everything that has happened, but it's also kind of sad, for the two of them because they were so bonded.
Yeah, I agree with you. But they seem to get some resolution to this. And this is why I had to read this issue twice, because we know there's this Jedi Hunter out there that's messing with their minds. But then we get these visions in all black of another character that's behind them, that's talking to them, making references to this other character. Well, it turns out it's Tay Sarek from phase 2 of the High Republic. And he's talking Terec through how to break through this vision. And once Terec does, he shares that information through his bond with Ceret, and Ceret manages to conquer his own vision, only to get tackled by one of the Nameless, which Tay then blasts off of him with the fist of what was that thing called? The
his gauntlet.
Yeah.
The hand of Cerberus.
Yeah, the hand of so he blasts the Nameless with the hand of Cerberus and cripples it. But then he's also got a lightsaber. He's a very much older looking Tay. It's been 100 years since we saw him last between phase 2 and phase 3. What did you think of Tay's return?
I didn't recognize him at first. When I first saw him in the panels, I'm like, oh my gosh, who's that? And then, of course, they explain right away who it is. But I love Tay in the earlier comics. So I was really excited to see him come back. But again, it's I love the fact that there are so many long-lived types of species in Star Wars, but I almost feel like it's getting to the point where they're using it almost too much. I hate to
Mm-hmm.
say that because it used to be that Yoda was so unique. You know what I mean? That he was like
Sure.
this 800-year-old Jedi and nobody ever lived that long, but it just seems like it's more of a convenient way to tie up loose ends in a story anymore, which maybe that's too harsh. But I do love Tay, so I liked seeing him come back.
Yeah, it was kind of like the anti-hero Obi-Wan Kenobi showing up
Yeah, yeah,
here.
there you go.
And to the analogy you made, it's like we had the original trilogy, then we went back to the prequel trilogy, and we pulled these characters like 20 years, from into the original trilogy from the prequel trilogy. That you know what I mean if you're a Star Wars fan, okay?
Right,
One came after the other.
right.
But so they kind of did the same thing here. They gave us phase one, then they went 100 years in the past to write phase two. And so we've got General Vice and we've got Tay Ceret and Yoda and a couple others that have been, in both phases of the High Republic. So I was
Mhm.
happy to see him. I mean, he was with Maddie and Vildar Mac in phase two, and neither one of those characters are around. But
Right.
he basically he's here and he's offering to help them. He's giving them advice on this Jedi hunter, this child of the storm, and yeah, so that's his involvement there. The other thing that's significant that happens on this issue, and then we'll kind of carry some of these conversations over into the next issue, issue 6, is that Sskeer is a gas that he injured Gunral, but he says it was important to protect the child. And then we see this young child wearing, I don't know, what would you call that costume? Their nose and mouth is covered, and they have something over their head, and all we can see is their eyes.
Yeah, it's almost like, something out of Aladdin in a way, where you just see the eyes. That's what it kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, right.
I can't think of what the name of that outfit is. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. If between the two of us, if anyone's gonna know, it's gonna be you, and I
Yeah.
don't. So there we are. All right, so let's get into issue 6. We've got Terec and Ceret, and they're still confronting Tay Ceret. Wow, that's funny. Let me write it like that. Terec and Ceret, Tay Ceret. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so Tay has the hand of Cerberus. This is where this really comes up from phase 2, and a lightsaber, which I'm presuming to be Vildar Max, based on the way the
Yes.
rest of the issue goes.
Same.
And he says he's trying to help them. And even though I can't remember which one of it was, Terec or Ceret, that was a ghastly hit someone's lightsaber, and they also don't like the fact that he's got this gauntlet, which is a Sith power. But he explains that a friend taught him how to use it for good, and he's mastered it and he knows how to. And then we get this flashback to phase 2. So there's this disagreement among convocation of Force users on Jeddah because there is a Force using adept who is a Naldi free wielder capable of manipulating fire who is terrorizing the Wayfarer section of the city. Tay believes he should be the one to go handle this because he knows the people, but instead Serene, who is a fallen Aussie, was sent instead. Tay doesn't take this well, and he has an argument with everyone in the council, including Vildar Mac. And then we find out that he and Vildar are a couple,
Yeah.
which surprised me to
Me
no
too.
end. They were clearly friends in
Mhm.
phase 2 and good friends. And, between those two and Maddie, they really had a wonderful friendship going on. But at one point, one of the other members of the convocation says something about trouble at home, which
Right.
completely went over my head
Oh, no,
until
I was like, yeah, I got that right away.
it went over my head until I saw them kiss.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, I did not see that coming.
Well, I'm gonna say I got it right away only because I thought that maybe he and Tay had kind of formed a home together just because I
Mhm.
had joked that they had this bromance,
Sure.
going on, and I just thought
And
that that
that's
was
how I
so
took it after
cool.
phase 2. Y
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, okay, that this happened."
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so like I said, did not see that coming.
No, I didn't either.
And honestly, it's another Forbidden Jedi romance when it comes down
Mhm.
to it. And, it seems like a lot of characters in the High Republic.
Yeah.
A lot of our Jedi are slipping into some sort of romance. And I I don't hate it, but I just kind of feel like, that was such a big deal for the prequel trilogy. How many more times do we need to tell that story?
Exactly, and that's kinda where I was too. I don't care what kind of romance it is, it's just the
Mhm,
fact that it is a romance that
mhm,
yeah, it just seems like it keeps happening over and over and over again. So just, like, bringing back these characters that have all of these long-lived types of lifespans, it's like, "Are we
mhm.
really doing this again?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the big one we've already got one that's like center stage, and that's Avar and Elzar
Right,
in
yeah.
phase 3. And so and then we have what's her face, Zine, and I can't remember who else from the High Republic Adventures as well. So there's one there as well. And it's like it's this constant, we know this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to go with my feelings
Yep,
and
here
like
we
that. It's like,
are.
yeah, the theme's been covered. So okay, are you going to put a new
Yeah.
spin on it, or what's the deal? Okay, but that aside, apparently Vildar helped Tay figure out how to use this Sith artifact for good. Do you have any feelings about that?
Well, the whole takeaway from this, I think, for Tay is just the fact that he was always kind of mistrusted,
Mhm,
displaced. He tried to do things for good, and they even at one point tell him that his I can't remember the exact words that they use, but about his use of the force, and it was almost condescending. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like here's Tay. Yeah, he was a thief. He did turn to this life, but it was kind of like he was thrown away by everybody. And
mhm,
so he was just wanting to prove a point that, you know what, these are my people. I know them well. Please let me give back to them. I'm the kind of person that should be out there doing these things for them. And then when one of the council members said, once a thief, always a thief, he was like, okay,
mhm,
I'm gonna show you just how good a thief I am. And so that's why he went and he got that hand of Sybaris, but he wanted to do it for good. And his intentions were good, but obviously, and then the whole Falinasi thing too, with him kind of overcoming that, it was almost like in some ways he was being downplayed for his role. And yes, he did help these people, but did he really do it in the best way? Of course, no. But I liked the idea that Vildar was there to counsel him
sure.
on using it correctly, and that, taking those intentions and actually turning them into the good. But I mean, I felt for Tay, because it's like, yeah, poor guy.
Yeah, you expanded your answer, I think, beyond what I was getting at on this, which is the hand of Cerberus was a really big deal in phase 2. It was a part of
Oh,
the
yeah.
audio
Okay.
drama. It was
Yes.
featured in the comics and
Mhm.
stuff like that. It was this Sith artifact. And now we've got Tay, who seems to have conquered it and can use it for good. Whereas, like in the flashback portion of this, it was clearly having an impact on him.
Mhm.
And Vildar showed up with a lightsaber and was like, "Take it off," and
Right,
and so
right.
he did. But then 100 years later, he somehow mastered that. And I don't want to be precocious about these artifacts and things like that, but you know, Sith holocrons and stuff like that, they're always known for their corrupting powers.
Mhm.
What was the Sith that had the mask that the guy was
Oh,
an artifact that
right.
that showed up in the Darth Vader thing. These Sith artifacts are no good. They corrupt the people that use them. Yet Tay would manage to find one that he could, and Vildar counseled him how to use it for good. I was like, is that possible? I mean, because it was being kept in the Temple of Kyber because it was so dangerous, and we saw all that firsthand in phase
Mhm.
2. So, I mean, they can do whatever they want with it. It was just that really surprised me.
Yeah. No, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, it's kinda like the Infinity Gauntlet in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. As soon as you put it on, then it can destroy the wearer in a lot of different ways. So, but yeah, and then to your point too, I guess another thing is that if Tay has had this for 100 years and he's been using it for good, wouldn't you think that there were stories out there or people that knew the fact that, this had been turned into something that was being wielded in a positive way, but as soon as, like, Terec and Ceret saw it, they're like, "Oh, it's bad. It's a Sith artifact."
hmm
So it must
yeah.
have been
I
on
don't
the
know.
down low for 100 years, you know?
Yeah, if I'm going to give them an out on that, I think it would be that the galaxy isn't as well known at this point as it is like in say the prequel trilogy, right? There's 100 more years of hyperspace lane development and news traveling back and forth. So
Good point.
maybe, like I said, I'm writing him an excuse. I don't know, but that's the best I can come up with for that.
That works.
Sure. So we're starting around time, so let's move it forward here. We get back to the present, and Tay's explaining about how he's taught how to use his hand for good. They put Gunral in a trance. Unfortunately, he passes away. And then, there's discussion of Hatar, who is the child of the storm. She's also Falanasi, just like the one that was on Jeddah that was sent to deal with the Naldi Freewielder, who was a mob enforcer at the time. And we get a little bit more backstory about the Children of the Storm. They were created by Baron Bullen from Force users, and then like from all sexes, not just Jedi. And Tay is out there trying to stop them. I kind of like that because he's taken this role that he had in the convocation. He may have been a marginal Force user, but he was still part of that convocation, and now he's moved that role beyond Jeddah to the galaxy to try and capture these Children of the Storm.
Yeah. Okay. So Baron Bullen, he was an Arthurian, right?
Right.
If I remember correctly, and he was kind of like the mad scientist that was experimenting on all these people, right? So he was working for Marchion Ro. Yes.
Yeah, he is the Minister of Advancement or something like that, or the technology. I can't remember which.
Okay.
He's one of the 3 ministers that are under Marchion Ro.
So he's essentially taking these. I'm talking out loud so I can, or thinking out loud so I can work this out from where these Children of the Storm came from, and like you said, corrupting different Force users to basically be puppets and go out and do their bidding. So he's almost like the Force Inquisitor kind of thing. Is that kind of how I'm understanding the whole?
Yeah, Baron
thing?
Bullen is experimenting on Jedi. He's experimenting on other Force users. He's experimenting on Nameless. He's experimenting on all kinds of things. He really is this mad scientist, geneticist type of a person that's creating things. And so he's corrupted these various Force users into becoming these Children of the Storm. They give them different abilities. He gives them different body parts sometimes. And this particular one, Hatar, is now capable of infiltrating the minds of the Jedi to make them see things that aren't there. But Baron Bullen is, he's just conducting all kinds of crazy experiments out there.
Okay. Yeah. I just needed to get my mind right again because I had the general idea, but that really helps a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then the whole thing ends as Keeve, Lourna, and Sskeer return. And that's when they find out that Gunral has passed away. Then there's this discussion of what's been going on, and then it's Lourna Dee that actually is kind of taken on the caretaker role for this mysterious child that we've just, she's at one point the child's hiding behind a plant, and she's like, come on out, little one, and she was like, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. These people are friends.
Yeah,
I love that
I know,
line.
that's what I was saying. Like Lourna is just, I love her in these. She's so funny.
I missed her.
Yeah,
it was
too.
The Tempest Runner audio drama was so good with her in it, and then she kind of fell out of grace with the Nile, and so she's been her own thing for a while, and now she's starting to form some sort of alliance and hope of a pardon with the Jedi. So
yes, but she's such a good character. I don't see her as a comic relief. I mean, even though she was kind of funny in these episodes, I don't want to put that out there that I think she's become the comic relief, because I don't. She's
like Han Solo. She's a cool character that has the occasional comedic line.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And then the child comes out behind the planet, sees I think it was Ceret, and throws a Force like push or something at him. And that's where we leave off on this. So there you have it. That's issues 5 and 6. We got some new stuff to chew on that's going on in phase 3 of the High Republic. You have any other final thoughts or observations about this before we wrap it up?
Well, yeah, and the Falanasi, I just think is such a cool tie-in because, as we know from the original Yavin 4, I mean, that was a Falanasi temple. Yep. So, I just think that tie-in is always so cool when they are able to pull things out like that and then actually, personify them and then give them some history, and then we get to see them in action. So that was really cool. I really valued that part of it. And then just getting, more of that resolution. It was great to get Sskeer back, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, I am curious to see what ultimately happens with Sskeer, if they're going to be able to recover him or not. I hope so, but we'll see. All right, then. Well, with that, just want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of Marvel's The High Republic, issues 5 and 6, written by Cavan Scott. We hope you enjoyed our discussion of comics. We do that from time to time. And if you want to check out some future discussions on comics, then hey, hit the subscribe button on your podcatcher choice for Podcast Stardust, and those will get downloaded for you automatically. Just as a reminder, we do 3 shows per week, usually some sort of a review episode. If we've got something on current on Disney Plus, we cover the news, and then we have either some sort of discussion or review of the latest book, comic, or whatever we do. We cover it all here on Podcast Stardust. You can find all episodes of the show over on retrozap.com, beyond the 200 or so that are going to probably show up on your podcatcher. And while you're there, you can check out some other great podcasts, such as Enjoy Stuff, the Doomcast, Animaniacast, Love, Death, and Growthbot Plus, Superhero Suite, and a few others. It's a great collection of shows on our tidy little network for RetroZap. And as always, we greatly appreciate your 5-star ratings and reviews and whatever podcatcher it is that you do use for your podcast, especially if it's Apple Podcasts. And it means a lot to us, and we're very grateful for those of you that share the show and your favorite episodes on social media with your friends. Word of mouth is the number one driver of helping the show grow. So with that in mind, Jay, we're going to remind everybody what our social media contacts are and what our other homes on the internet are.
You got it, Dennis. We are very easily found on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Podcast Stardust. And we do have a Pinterest page with tons of boards with all kinds of fun Star Wars-y kinds of things. So head over there. And we also have our 2 YouTube outlets. We have our regular YouTube and our YouTube music outlet, which both does support reviews and interaction. So if you head over there, like, subscribe, and hit us up. And we're also on Discord, where we are just one of many different rooms. So all the RetroZap shows have their own room over there as well. So if you'd like to interact with us and let us know what you thought of these comics or anything else on your mind, you can go to that link in our show notes. And also in our show notes is our link to our TeePublic store, where you can pick up one of 7 different Podcast Stardust logo designs available on everything from home goods, apparel, and pretty much everything in between. So if you do get something, that does help to support the show. And another way that you can support the show is by heading over to Saber Master. So if you need a lightsaber and you are in need of 2 lightsabers, they also have a 2-for-1 deal going on the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0. And all of the other battle ready sabers that they have. They're really great quality, and Dennis and I really love the ones that we have. So you can go to sabermasters.com or hit up the link in our show notes. And if you do happen to pick up anything, make sure you use the code Stardust at checkout, and that will get you an extra $10 off and will also help to support the show. So another show that you can support is Warp Trails. And I know, Dennis, you've got some things coming up on the horizon for that. So why don't you tell everybody about that?
Right. So my wife and I are talking Star Trek over on Warp Trails, which is a podcast exclusive to the RetroZap podcast feed. We are eagerly awaiting the arrival of the 5th and final season of Lower Decks. And when that is here, we'll be covering it. So if you want to check out the show, you can do that on your podcatcher of choice. Just look for the RetroZap feed. Or the best place you can probably get all the episodes right now is just to go to retrozap.com and look for the Warp Trails tab. And you'll get all of our previous 100 some odd episodes talking about Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, Picard, and Discovery. Jay, what's going on with cosplay?
All right. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. So if you're interested in any kind of Star Wars cosplay, I am Ahsoka, Hera from both the Ahsoka series as well as Rebels, and the Fourth Sister from Kenobi, my original concept Mandalorian, and some other fun things as well. So I am eagerly awaiting a few different opportunities for appearances, and I'll let you know if those happen to happen. But I'm definitely going to be at the Cleveland Gaming Classic in September, and so I will have some updates coming up on that. But otherwise, you can go over to j.snipscosplay and see what I'm up to.
All right. So upcoming on the show this Friday, we are getting into the series or season finale, at least, for The Acolyte. We're recording this before that episode is aired, but I'm sure we're going to be excited to talk about it when we get the chance. And then on Monday, we'll be getting back into Star Wars news. So thanks for listening to episode 756 of Podcast Stars, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time, the Force be with you.